On we go. Oops. Alarm call. Alarm call from a go-away bird. There's the kind of alarm call that tells me there's an eagle that's been seen by birds somewhere. Oh, he wants a piece of you, Andrew. He's coming. His friend's a bit of a chicken running away, but... Sorry boys, I'm sorry to disturb. I'll leave you now. I'll leave you be. Bachelor boys. Not much different to me. Oh, that rhyme. Moving north. I want to head to Buffalo Dam because Mbula the leopard, big male leopard, was last seen there this morning. Brent did find tracks. Brent went to have a look. Did find tracks, but didn't manage to find them. Now this is Nyala Road North, straight ahead of us. This is the quickest way to Buffalo Dam. But there are a lot of signal breakups there, and I'd like to just head east for a little bit. This is Central Road, and this is going to tell me what might have crossed going north-south until we get up to Drakensberg Road, Drakensberg Drive. It helps me understand what and where the animals are at the moment, or more specific, those animals that merely move through the area. They either encompass a larger territory than what we have here at Djuma, or they have such a large home range or such a large area of ground that they cover that we are but a little postage stamp. Okay. Quite a few of them. I wondered why the hornbill was looking like it was. Aha. Well spotted, Andrew. I don't know what it is about hornbills and dwarf mongooses, but mongooses, yeah, that too. But they do spend time together, and I think because hornbills do like to dig up grubs more than, well, as much as they like to catch insects in the grass and feed on fruits and berries and things. I think with dwarf mongoose, who dig a lot, sometimes they're so frantically digging for things they don't really see some of the stuff that they actually dig up. And the hornbill that sits close by maybe be the one that finds it. Now if I go a little bit forward, we'll see a little bit more of this relationship that they have. There's a hornbill right next to a mongoose on the termite mound there. Although it's preening, it's definitely there because the mongoose are there. And the mongoose are pretty much all around it. Oh, it's flown off around the back. I think this is a colony that are foraging. I don't think they live around that termite mound. I think they're on the move. That's why they are. There's some further back, so they're on an expedition, their daily expedition to find food. Hello, child. Such a glossy coat in this late afternoon light. Toileting. Maybe they do live up there. Maybe they're coming home after a day of foraging. Digging up grubs, chasing lizards, stealing eggs. Yeah, the usual kind of mongoose routine. Can see a squirrel with a marula nut and a squirrel eating buffalo thorn berries, and a bird that I really need to. Oh, it's flown away. Where did that come from?
No idea.
No, he couldn't. He got headphones on. We might just have to do Nyala Road North. Yep. I think it's the African hawk eagles that are down there. Just up the drainage line. This is the drainage line that comes from Buffelshoek Dam. We might just have to endure a little bit of signal break-up to head that way, because I heard a francolin alarming. I don't know if you can see that squirrel in the buffalo thorn here.
Yes, I can see it.
The other squirrel that had a marula nut run off with the marula nut. But this little child's harvesting marula nut, buffalo thorn fruits. Probably chewing into it to get to the seed. Now there was a green woodupoo. Still want to find one of those for Chris. Hi Cindy in Boston. Cindy's asking a question about animal alarm calls. Is it the urgency and the repetitiveness or the tone, I'm going to have to paraphrase, but what is it about the alarm call that tells us that it's an alarm call? It's mostly, Cindy, it's the harshness of it. Most of the birds have a melodious call, and the animals that give alarm calls certainly don't have that kind of a vocabulary when they're talking to each other, because most of their talking is done with body language, because vocalizing is only left for a couple of very important things, one of which is to be able to sound the alarm. So alarm calls are all very, very harsh. Not so much the repetitiveness of it, but certainly the urgency and the tone and there's a frantic, sometimes harsh, sometimes very excited. Trying to think of ways to describe it, but alarm calls are very distinctly alarm calls. You can't mistake alarm calls for communication calls, except for the parrots, of course. I mean, parrots have just got a loud squawk, so you just got to give them their due. That's how they like to talk to each other. There's subtleties in their squawks, I think, that we don't understand. Let's continue. I haven't heard more alarm calls. I still want to go this way. Somehow I'm going to stick to my guns this time. Mostly because I know we're going to lose signal if we go Nyala Road North in a lot of places, because it's an up and down thing, and I do use that road sometimes. A long time ago, there was actually an African hawk eagle nest. There's the green whoopoo, and I have to get up the hill. One of them. Don't fly away, please. Just don't hide either. Just the tail sticking out. We should have really good light on it. The sun came out from a cloud right now. I don't see the rest of the colony. They're normally a social bird. They're normally in families. Ah, no, those are babblers. It just flew by and babbled. The babblers babble. They don't tweet. You can tweet. There it goes. You can tweet to hashtag Safari Live to be able to send in questions. Hang on a sec. Sorry. Oops. Or you can send emails to questions@wildearth.tv. There's definitely a colony of mongoose that are foraging on their way home. They don't live here. Some of them have crossed the road already, and they're remaining well hidden because they're foraging, and they're mostly concentrating on digging, so they're not really going to be out in the open until maybe they get back to their termite mound or until they're crossing the road. Hello children, all over the place, the mongoose everywhere, scattering. Okay, we will have to try for the woodpeckers again another time. he was asking if I can compare the size of the dwarf mongoose to the ground squirrels that we see. We're seeing tree squirrels, B. We are a little bit far to the east and the south for ground squirrels. They're more dry country animals that live in Kalahari. I suppose it's semantics when you want a size comparison, because I suppose our tree squirrels are pretty much the same size as ground squirrels. What do you think, Andrew? You got to know ground squirrels pretty well.
I think ground squirrels are a little bit bigger.
Yeah?
Yeah, quite a bit bigger than
Okay.
squirrels.
Well, I'd say that here our tree squirrels and our dwarf mongoose are about the same size. Only that, of course, the squirrel's got a much bigger tail, so it gives that appearance of being a little bit bigger. But body size, I'd say that our tree squirrels are about the same size as the dwarf mongoose. Did you have dwarf mongoose with the meerkats? Andrew was with meerkats, by the way, in Kalahari, filming them. No. I suppose it would be too much competition, since the meerkats pretty much occupy that niche.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind and keeping in hand the false marula leaf, but they're too high for me. I've got to find a marula that's low enough. I know of one up at Cedar Cutline that was pushed over by elephants a long time ago, and it will have green leaves that I could reach, but most of these marulas are a little bit high off of the ground. I haven't forgotten, but you see, this is my ploy to keep you viewing until I get there. Stay tuned for the marula reveal. The marula tree. The differences between the false marula leaf and the real marula leaf. Oops, sorry squirrel. I was sitting in the road eating a marula nut. He's going up the tree. Hiding away. Ground squirrels tend to nest in the ground, tree squirrels tend to nest in the tree. I guess, and it's gone into a hole. I guess nesting also kind of dictates where they spend most of their time. And while the tree squirrels do spend a lot of time on the ground, they spend most of their time in trees, and they also nest in trees. Ground squirrels, however, I don't think spend too much time in trees. Did you ever see ground squirrels going into trees? What trees? He said.
Not really.
No. Were there sort of, was there much in the way of trees, or was it sort of low acacia scrub?
Low acacia scrub. A few scattered trees. Not great.
And did the ground squirrels ever climb any of those trees?
Not that I noticed. They mainly just stayed on the ground and use their tails as like a umbrella to shield the sun.
Okay. That's interesting.
Big bushy tails.
Probably because they don't have to climb trees and get caught in thorns and stuff. Plus the added warmth for those cold Kalahari nights that they can wrap around themselves like a blanket. where Mvula was this morning. We're heading north. We're going to be on our way to Buffelshoek Dam. Jennifer, hello Jennifer. Jennifer's calling from Toronto, well, writing it. Hi Jennifer. What is the reasoning behind the disproportionately large testicles of the tree squirrels? Jennifer, it is something, it is a phenomenon amongst all rodents that when they're breeding, the testicles swell exponentially. Reasoning behind it, possibly, well, I have to think about it. Fertility and testosterone and breeding, maybe even it is something that is linked to sexual selection rather than natural, a different sort of genetic selection based on climate and other factors that dictate other forms of physiology within an animal. The reason why some things become so colorful because females prefer it that way, and so the ones that have more color, or in this case bigger testicles, prove to be the better breeders, and so they're sought out by the females. And so, oh, you've got a big grasshopper or something, that hornbill flown quite far. Could be a praying mantis that he's caught. Trying to rub the legs off. Some of the legs, grasshoppers and mantids, can have spines on them. Not that much in the way of any nutritional value. Oh, he dropped it. Can't see it too well, but it looks like it could be a praying mantis. And what it's doing is it's pulverizing the mantis by chopping it up all the way along the body with its beak. It's hard to see. I can't get very much closer without frightening it. And our angle isn't great because there are a few branches in the way. Maybe try and move back a few inches if you want to keep it zoomed. Until we get obscured by this bush on our left, or before the bush on our left. You can find it. No, it's getting too obscured. Trying to swallow it as well, but probably legs are hindering it. Difficult to tell from this distance. I think it's battling to get it down. He says as he swallows it. No, it's still there. This is a red-billed hornbill. There's a white-crowned shrike's calling, flying over us. getting stuck, battling. I know that feeling when you're really hungry and you take a bite of something and you eat or chew too quickly and it kind of gets stuck. It doesn't want to go down, it doesn't want to come back up. And I nearly drove past it, but the whole reason I came here was to come to this very specific marula tree that was pushed over a couple of years ago, a few years ago actually, just to grab a leaf. Like this one looks like it's going to fall off soon. And there are not many marula trees that I can reach a good leaf because they're such tall trees. I was lucky enough to get the false marula. Now, offhand, it's fairly easy to see that they are quite different. Oh, this one's lost. It's not a very good example. Got to find one. Let's try that again. Fetching marula leaf, take 2. Let's find one that's got all of its leaflets. And that might be one there. I want one of those nice big ones. They're too high. I'm too lazy. Will do. Will do. Marula leaves can be as big as that, but this one's as big as this. They are paler and they can get a little bit darker, but the most important thing about them, even though the size looks very different, there are some marula these are leaflets, remember. There are some that are nearly as big as that, but the most important thing is this little stem over here, which is known as a petiolule, that doesn't exist in the false marula, but it does exist in the marula. Now when you see the tree from a distance, or when it's close up, it's very easy to see there's considerable difference between the two. They're compound leaves, they both have a terminal leaflet, but there is a slight difference in the color, difference in the sheen, but the main difference, of course, is the fact that the leaflets have this little stem called a petiolule and the false marula doesn't. So it's not that great of a mystery, and I'm sorry to have been, if it's a bit of an anticlimax, but finally managed to finish that little chapter for this afternoon's drive. Thanks for your patience on that. Not the only marula tree being pushed over, there are others, but I was getting a little sidetracked by other things that we saw. We still want to try and get to Whiffles Dam, and if we can, maybe to the Hyena Dam. And time is marching on. Shall we go this way? Why not? Let's do that. Oops. A bit of erosion from the rain. I think he would probably be walking now, Mr. Mbula, Mr. Rain. Mbula means rain. He's the dominant male leopard of this area. And he's the father of Quarantine and Kanuma. To remind you, if you haven't been with us for too long this afternoon, we are having a fireside chat this evening. We're going to be in camp for the fireside chat rather than out on quarantine. birds eating insects, not very many birds eating worms. Do we get a lot of worms in the area? Well, I think I wouldn't say really fairy tale concept, but the concept of the bird and the worm is probably far too pervasive in that it's kind of like birds only eat worms. There certainly are earthworms here, but very seldom do they come out onto the surface, and there are very few species of birds that are equipped to be able to probe the ground and actually dig out earthworms. And while there might be a number of different species of earthworms, they are pretty much the only worms as such that we have. However, a lot of the larvae of insects are referred to as worms. I mean, there's the inchworm, but it's actually a caterpillar. And so, much like all insects are called bugs, sometimes all things that crawl like a worm are called worms. So technically, are we referring to the real thing that is a worm, like an earthworm or a nematode or something like that? Or are we referring to anything like the larva of a beetle or the larva of a butterfly or the larva of a moth, anything that crawls that looks like a worm? Perhaps one of the reasons why we don't see too many birds eating caterpillars or worms at the moment is because there aren't that many out right now. Caterpillars, if those are the kind of worms you're referring to, are mostly in their final instar stages right now, which means that they're almost reaching, if they haven't already reached the stage where they're going to go into the pupa and pupate to become the adult. And it's only really early in the season when there are a lot of caterpillars about, because when caterpillars hatch, when the eggs hatch into caterpillars, they need fresh new leaves to feed on, because they're sometimes so tiny, they're so small, they can't really feed on the hard mature leaves of a lot of their host plant, and they need to be growing with the plant as the plant grows in the wet season. So they hatch early, and they but as for worms, there are the hardidars and there are the hoopoes, the African hoopoes. There are two of the main species of birds that will probe the ground to find earthworms. Hornbills dig a little bit. There are starlings might dig a little bit. There are a few things that do dig, perhaps lucky enough to find earthworms, but we don't ever have the case of earthworms sticking their heads up and the bird pulling on an earthworm in the hole. Sort of classic sort of thing. Let's just back it up. Excuse me. About Koro, and Koro is a little bit too far east for us to be concerned about what's going on there, unless they start coming west, whatever it is. I just want to poke our head in here, our camera, to see if Mvula is, just in case, no, you never know, just in case he's around somewhere. Some hippo. I think he's somewhere on Buffalo's or Cutline. I think he's left them already. We know the crocodile is gone because we've seen its tracks. It's going to be a beautiful sunset this evening. This cloud. Let's get a little bit of that before we go. Mark, go ahead. Station calling, Mark. No luck. Go ahead. There's a little baby chased the heron off of its mama's back. Tiny little hippo. We'll see its head pop up again perhaps. There it is. Ephraim, come in. Ephraim, come in. Wrong radio. Ephraim, come in. Answered my question before I could answer it. One of the dam walls up north of us on Buffelshoek, or could be east on Leadwood, Torchwood. Beautiful. Thank you, Hippo. Lovely display. Sounds like a little leopard known as Bahuti. I was wondering if maybe that was Mvula, but we've still got a chance of finding Mvula, so let's do so. Go around the dam and head up Buffelshoek cut line for a bit.